Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Hard Truth. Thank you so much for watching. And I want to give a shout out to our friends in Canada, Germany, Hungary, and Italy. All right. Hello to everyone in those places. And thank you for supporting the channel. Listen, today we got to talk about the objection to the state's motion to compel motive of defense of alibi or alternatively to bar certain evidence. All right, this is part one of that series. And so grab yourself a nice cup of coffee, a nice cup of tea, because, honey, we need to talk about this. Let's begin our story. Okay, before we get started here, a quick note. On my last video, there's something about Bethany. I didn't mean for it to loop. There was a part two to that, and instead of merging the part two to it, I merged part one again. So later on today, I will produce the part two that was supposed to be in There's Something About Bethany, okay? So if you think that's weird that it's repeating, it is. I didn't mean to loop it. Okay, on this, there are 2 points that I really want to make quickly here. I didn't get a chance to really research some things that I wanted to, but I do want to speak on this quickly, and then maybe just do a part two to this also. All right. It says Mr. Kohberger has long had a habit of going for drives alone. Often he would go for drives at night. He did so late on November 12th and into November the 13th. Mr. Kohberger is not claiming to be at a specific location at a specific time. At this time, there is not a specific witness to say precisely where Mr. Kohberger was at each moment of the hours between late night, November 12th, and early morning, November the 13th. He was out driving during the late night and early morning hours of November 12th to 13th. There are a few things here that I got from this paragraph. Number one, the prosecution should love this, that this guy cannot say, this is exactly where I was, and these people can say, can vouch for me. I mean, that's a gift to the prosecution. I'm just being honest, okay? All you Kohberger fans that can't stand for somebody to say something about Brian Kohberger, the fact of the matter is, his alibi is very ambiguous right now. And so that's a gift to the prosecution because he can't say where he was, which is why he's still in jail. We already knew that. All right. But another thing about this is, all right, on the PCA, it's saying that somebody was driving from Blaine all around the south end of Idaho and back to Pullman. And so this kind of would line up with that maybe he was out driving those places, not necessarily Moscow, but the drive from Blaine to Uniontown and Genesee and all that. Maybe they're setting this up to where they can say, okay, that was him, but this wasn't. And so that's a possibility. The third thing that I got from this is that let's see, I lost my train of thought. Not a specific witness to say between late night and okay, another thing I'm thinking is Ann Taylor should have pulled surveillance by now of the places he passed by and found him on camera somewhere. Somewhere between his apartment, Blaine, or wherever he took his drive, and back to the apartment between the 12th and the 13th, there has to be some surveillance camera that picked up his car and picked up him outside of Moscow. And Ann Taylor should be in possession of that by now. And that's a big one for this case because if he was out driving for that long in 2023, even in a rural area like Idaho or, some parts of Washington on the state line, there's a surveillance camera that should have caught him. I don't believe, and I won't believe, that if he was out driving for, let's say, an hour, or even half an hour, that he didn't pass by a place with a camera where they can go and pull the film. I mean, that's just too much ground covered with his car for Ann Taylor not to be able to go back and say, let me get this surveillance for this place here. You know, there's somebody's got him on camera. And to say that right now there's not a specific witness to say precisely where he was, I mean, I'm skeptical of that. Maybe she's withholding that information for the trial, if there's a trial, or maybe not. But just this paragraph right here has a lot of innuendos that we can discuss later, but this is the opener for it. And I want to go to another paragraph, okay, before we get into the statutory requirements and all of that. There's something else that stood out to me. All right, it says cooperation with Brian Kohberger not being at 1122 King may be brought out through cross-examination of the state witnesses. Okay, well, what state witnesses? You just said there's no specific witness that can say where he was. So how's that going to change when you get ready to cross-examine somebody? I mean, to me, that's contradictory. Either there's a witness or there's not. Okay? Now, the big thing that Ann Taylor said that I agree with is here. At this time, Mr. Kohberger cannot be more specific about the possible witnesses and exactly what they will say. The defense has been hampered by the state's own choices. The state chose a secret grand jury rather than a planned preliminary hearing. This is true. Had the state moved forward with the preliminary hearing, the defense would have had the opportunity to develop testimony through cross-examination and witness presentation. All right, it's a double-edged sword here because first of all, this is true. As soon as they start asking about Bethany, the grand jury, they got that up and running quick and just throughout the preliminary hearing. And so now that they have the indictment, all the guns are up saying, give us an alibi. Now that the indictment is in place. When all you had to do was have the preliminary hearing and hear everything that the defense had concerning the case. But you didn't want it that way. All right? But then if you look at it on the other hand, who cares when they give it? If you have a defense, help this man save his life. What are we waiting on a trial for anything for? All right? The indictment should make it even more expedient for you to provide some type of reasonable doubt that would make the state question whether they even need to spend money on a trial. Okay? So I'm saying this could go either way. But Ann Taylor is 100% correct. You would have heard everything you needed to hear in the preliminary hearing with the witnesses and whatever. But my question is, would the defense have been ready? Okay, the hearing was June 26th, June 28th. Here it is, August. And it seems like the defense wouldn't have been ready to cross-examine and present witnesses on June the 26th. I can't see it because right now they're struggling to, meet these deadlines, and we already had one stay. All right, but then you look at that. The judge already gave one stay, so what other stays would he give? All right, in the favor of the defense. But the point of the matter here is the state chose a grand jury, and they forfeited their right to hear everything the defense had in this man's defense. And I think Ann Taylor and Brian should have recovered from that by now, and they should be ready to drive home a very strong argument that Brian was not in Moscow. And right now, all we have is a capital not, but we don't have anything substantial to say, well, maybe he wasn't there. And the fact that he was out during that time doesn't help him either. All right, so let me think about this. We're going to talk about it a little bit more and in more detail with a little bit more law.